First floor's all boarded up.
Yeah, we faced these guys before.
All right, my drone spawned on the second floor. Got one that just passed me. It looks like we got 3 more in the hallway. They're reinforcing the kids' room, north wall. Right there, they're blocking the master bedroom.
I got one, ground level. Looks like he's blocking the main entrance.
Oh, I see the hostage. She's in the kids' room. They're barricading all the windows. Ah, shit, they saw me. Drone's out.
Okay, I say we breach the garage.
No, I'd rather not. I mean, they always defend it with a shitload of booby traps. I say we drop in the roof and breach the 3 second-floor windows. We all come in at once. What do you guys think?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good.
All right, let's vote for a helicopter drop.
Roger that.
All set.
Sweet. All right. Just for the record, this is going to be used for a film project in my business class.
Okay.
And you are okay with me using your voice?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, for sure. Okay. Could you please tell me who you are and tell me a little bit about yourself?
My name is Cody Stubbs. I'm a golfer. Trying to be a golf pro. I'm an electrician. I work a lot. In my free time, I enjoy playing some video games, watching competitive video games, specifically shooter games like Rainbow Six Siege, Apex. Those are probably the biggest games I watch competitively.
Okay.
Like to hang out at home, chill out with my cat. I like to cook.
That's dope.
Yeah.
You said you love playing like video games and stuff like on the side. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? You said you play Rainbow Six Siege, right?
Yeah, so it's been a while since I've played anything competitively. I don't have my PC anymore, so I don't play as much, and it's harder for me to really enjoy that game on a console.
Yeah.
The game's just it's a different world, different beast, I guess you could say, on PC. But I just like going out and playing stuff that, you know, not only is it competitive with the team, but it's self-reliant on the things that you do and how you play and how you think. I'm really big on that, especially the strategy that goes along with it. That's where the majority of my background and all this comes from, is strategizing and watching other people play and learning how to get better and helping other people get better.
Oh, of course. You saying that's your background. What is your background in video games, if you don't mind me asking?
So I got my start in video games as a GameStop manager. I was a manager for several locations for a number of years, but one of the benefits of being a GameStop manager is you get to go to this games conference. It's kind of like an E3, but it's specifically held for just GameStop managers.
Oh, that's cool.
So they do that once a year, and when you go out there, every big video game company is there. So you have EA, you have Ubisoft, DICE, Activision's there, Steam representatives are there, Sony, Microsoft, if I didn't say those already. Just pretty much everybody from within the games industry shows up to this because they're there to get everybody hyped about new games that are coming out, new equipment that's coming out, because ultimately our job was to sell their product, pre-order their product, and ensure that these people were excited about what was coming out. So I did that for many years, but one of the side things that happened with that is I ended up running into some competitive Call of Duty players at one of the conferences. So I'm sure you've heard of these guys. I met Optic Hex, I met Scump, I met Crim6, I met Nadeshot, met all these guys. They came out to the video game conference in Anaheim one year, and I just got to pick in Heck's brain a little bit about esports and what it was like to own an organization, and you know how difficult it was to manage these young players, and especially with people being so different, people having their own ways of doing things at that age. It's really difficult to find good leadership that they'll follow. So kind of got to picking his brain about that, and it really got me interested in the industry. And I ended up starting to stream on Twitch. I streamed quite a bit on Twitch, and that's when I found out about Rainbow Six Siege. So when Siege was originally coming out, because of this video game conference that I used to go to as a manager, certain managers got into the alpha testing for it. So yeah, I started off with the alpha testing in Rainbow Six, went all the way through the alpha, the beta, and then all the way into the main game. I wasn't a PC guy at the time. I had a PC. They could play it, not very well. So I ended up starting playing on console, on Xbox. So I'd play with my friends, and then I met a lot of people like throughout the competitive scene through Call of Duty and stuff who kind of got me in touch with some of these, not like the big names at the time, but I guess you could call them like the minor league type guys. Still really good players, just not part of like a major organization. Yeah, so I got hooked up with a bunch of these guys, started playing Rainbow Six with them, really learning how to play the game from their perspective. And you know, the way that I played the game, I went out and you know, I would play, and I was decent at the game, but seeing these guys' strategy behind why they do anything and the patience that they have when either playing on attack or defense, just in what they do and how they work together, I really started to learn a lot about that. And that ultimately led me to a point where I would start analyzing a lot of this stuff so I could get better for myself personally.
Yeah, we had spoken at length prior that you were an analyst too for some professional teams.
Yeah.
Could you name those teams for us?
Well, so Infamy was the first team I did it for, and I was actually part of that organization. They brought me in as a streamer, as part of their like stream team. They had 2 really big pros that played for them at the time. One of them's actually a COD analyst, or not a COD, I'm sorry, Rainbow Six analyst now. He does like the season invitationals, things like that. He goes by the name Rams.
Oh, I've heard of him for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so Rams spent a lot of time with me teaching me how to play the game from a professional point of view. And he's a big reason why I got into what I did. So because of knowing him, I ended up started working with another team who's no longer an active organization, but it was Team Reciprocity. So I got to kind of get in on the ground floor with them when they got into the Rainbow Six scene. Worked with some players, but I mostly worked with the coaches. More or less, like they would come to me with like upcoming matches, upcoming scrims, things like that. And a lot of this information would get recorded on these players' PCs if it wasn't being live streamed. And I would get this information and or all of this video, and I would go through it and I would watch how. So like when you have scrims or when you're playing against other teams, like that video is made available for other teams
to use.
So I would go through and I would watch the teams that they were competing against. I would watch player perspectives. I would go through and see how they set up for attack phases and defense phases. You know, there's a lot that goes into Rainbow Six Siege, barricading walls. Every operator's got different unique abilities that they bring to the table to help either, you know, promote the attack side or the defense side. So I would go through and I would watch how these guys would set things up. Really analyze like all that information, and then on the other side of that, I would watch how our team would play both on attack and defense, and find areas of opportunity, I guess is the best way to put it, for how certain people play against like other players. For instance, if you have somebody that's playing like as a roamer, you know, you set on defense, you set up defense of your 2 like bomb sites. So you have somebody that plays at a roamer, watch how they play as a roamer, and then give them feedback and information based on how other teams enter each map.
Yeah. How they attack each specific site.
Yeah, exactly. So there are common entry points. If these entry points get blocked off because they see that they're being defended well, or there's a roamer in the area, and they can't get anybody inside the site to help push and clear out that roamer and try to eliminate that roamer, I would find alternative locations that they would try to enter and give them feedback on that. As far as like, you know, once they get inside the building, helping provide like information on when a roamer should drop back, or different places they could potentially like find an opportunity to get an elimination because some teams won't clear all of the rooms, they won't use all of their tools or utility that they have to help like eliminate certain players because they rely on these utilities to be used to actually enter like a bomb site, try to eliminate players, and ultimately like plant a diffuser and start defending. So, you know, if the attacking team gets in to a site and they become, or they're able to plant the diffuser, now they're essentially the defensive team, and your defensive team originally now has to play more of an attacking type role, and they've got to find ways to enter and get into the back to their site and try to retake their site and, you know, stop the team from defusing the bomb that's inside the building.
Absolutely. A lot of these like situations and scenarios that happen within like scrims and then also legitimate matches, all of that information is so very crucial to formalizing a strategy for not only this team that you're playing against, but getting that information back to the players so that themselves can also improve at their own game.
Yeah.
Because all of this information that you're bringing in, just like your equipment usage, all of that stuff is necessary so that these different players who are playing roamers know that they're effectively doing their job well or seeking areas where they need to improve.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had mentioned you worked for Reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
I did do some research that they did end up downscaling their whole organization, and they sold their Rainbow Six team.
Yeah, they did end up selling their roster. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you have still worked inside that organization if they hadn't downscaled?
It's entirely possible. The point where they started to downscale is where life started to be a little bit more important to me, and I was trying to not spend so much time, I guess, doing what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I worked a full-time job, and I would come home and I would spend another like 6 to 9 hours every night
Just reviewing footage.
just watching all of this stuff. And you know, some of the stuff you would have to watch over and over and over and over just to make sure that you're not missing like any little thing. 'Cause in these competitive environments, the smallest details matter so much to helping the team, you know, not only play well but improve themselves. So, you know, to be effective at what I was doing, which was an unpaid gig, by the way, to find success in that, you really had to find like the little things and really be good about the detail and the information that you provided back to the coaching.
Oh, absolutely. Like it would all have to basically just come from, I guess, experience and knowledge of how Rainbow Six works as like a game, how attacking and defending games work.
Yeah.
If you've played other games like CS:GO or Valorant and these other cases, they all work so differently and inherently the same at the same time. That information would have to be consistent and very well thought out of, because I guess it all comes from word of mouth. So that kind of part of the industry is kind of hard to break into, and I can understand that. Within the video game industry, a lot of it is reliant on who you are as a person and how people view you, because I guess everyone is just really worried about how well known you are and if you create things that are exceptional, pretty much. And that's the only real way things get around within the industry, and word travels really quick in the industry.
Yeah. And like to kind of go off of what you were just saying, like, you know, my name wasn't really known to players as much as it was like behind the scenes to like ownership and mostly like coaching.
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's primarily who I dealt with. You know,
Yeah.
I would play with a lot of the guys like outside just for fun, outside of like a competitive environment. Like obviously we'd still go in and you know,
Play public matches.
yeah, play public matches and ranked matches and you know, do our thing. But yeah, so specifically like what I did, like I never reached like a high profile status. That's just not what the position was about. But doing what I did provided the ability for the players and the coaches to eventually like get put up on that pedestal that they very much deserve to be on, because they're incredibly talented. You know, and when I started doing like Rainbow Six was getting big and it was growing, but the esports scene really just continued to blossom. A lot of the esports that you watch nowadays and the success that a lot of the esports have are in large part due to the success that happened inside of Rainbow Six. Rainbow Six was really the first competitive game, I guess you could say, that really went into the super fine details of analyzing information and specifically like learning how each team that you're playing is operating, both within the game and outside of the game, because you know how an organization is run and managed tells you a lot about how they're going to perform when it comes game time. And a lot of that had to do with specifically money. Like the more money you could throw at things, the more ability you had to get everything that you needed to find success in terms of having the right coaches in place, having enough coaches in place, having good managers in place. You know, a lot of these big organizations relocate their teams to a team house now, so everybody's together. You know, it just helps build camaraderie between everybody that's playing. That doesn't always necessarily work out with like every single organization, but if you go back and you look, a lot of teams now that are playing Valorant and Call of Duty and Apex and Rainbow Six Siege, and Fortnite's not really a team game, but even there's Fortnite organizations that put all of their players that play individually inside like the same house. So they build a bond and they really are able to understand each other the more they get to know each other, and that just helps them work better together.
Oh, absolutely. I actually got it, like, I guess, my start in like the whole, I guess, video game genre from watching like these team houses and stuff like that. I was heavily into Call of Duty professional pro circuit back in the day. I used to, always represent Team Caliber, if you ever...
Yeah, I remember Caliber, yeah.
Yeah. I loved CosDef's YouTube videos. He was a fantastic content creator, still is. He still makes content today. But seeing how like FaZe and Optic, how they were able to like bring these like kids together and create something out of almost nothing.
Yeah.
Kind of truly is what got me my start in the industry. And I guess that's kind of where it leads me to within this interview, is asking if the game industry in and of itself was a positive impact on you and your life. Do you think so?
Oh, I 100% believe it was definitely a positive impact. You know, anytime you do any type of job, there's definitely going to be challenges that come up, and there's definitely going to be times where you find doubt in yourself. You know, specifically like if you provide information to a team and it ends up that your information wasn't as useful as it could have been because the other team changed their strategy up because they realized who's analyzing their data, and saying, you know, understanding like, hey, this person like knows what they're talking about, they're going to be prepared really well. Those teams would go off and do something else, and then, you know, the match just ends up not turning out the way that it had been planned for or expected based on the information that was given. And, you know, a lot of frustration sets in when things like that happen, and, you know, you find yourself doubting yourself, your information, your ability to analyze information. So I was definitely had some challenging moments where I doubted myself, but, you know, working with the people that I got to work with, I got a lot of really good feedback, and we came to a good understanding with how each of us works, and we knew that teams were getting smarter and smarter about having people be prepared for them in terms of analyzing their data. In fact, they would almost kind of set you up in a way where during a scrim, they would intentionally play one way so that information and that data would be gathered and given to the team, and then they would come out and play completely different. But that's getting a little off topic of your question. But you know, I would definitely say it had a positive impact on me. One of the things that I really got out of it the most was just learning how to deal with so many different types of personalities, understanding how different people react to different information, and finding more neutral ways to deliver that information and not involve my feelings, but just going off of raw data and fact. So that's helped me a lot, like moving forward in other jobs that I've had. You know, communication's a big thing, and finding a way to communicate with a whole variety of people is important to find success in anything that you do in life. So I would say that it's probably the biggest thing that I took from working in that industry.
Absolutely. A lot of, I guess, like the feedback you would have to provide would have, I guess, how am I trying to say this? I can understand the mental aspect of trying to come to terms about the information that you're putting out and the things and how you feel about, I guess, your team's output at the end of the day and how that reflects against yourself and how you feel. It does seem like it's a complicated way, or I guess like an emotion to try to capture.
Yeah.
Trying to feel, I guess, responsible for another person's mishap, or maybe the information you could have been better. It's certainly, I guess, a difficult thing to understand and I guess comprehend and then engage in. But I'm glad that it actually left you with like a positive outlook on the video game industry. It seems that a lot of the people who have, I guess, retreated from it or left the industry have had always bad tastes in their mouth when they end up leaving. So it's great to hear that someone who was actively involved in a franchise that I love had a positive reaction from it.
A large contributor to, players or different staff members not having a positive outlook on the time that they spent with the team, and maybe having a little bit of animosity towards the organizations that they're no longer a part of, or maybe even the leagues that they're no longer a part of, or, people kind of go into competitive gaming with a mindset of how they view things are going to turn out. And when things don't turn out the way that they viewed that they were going to turn out, a lot of these people, and a large part of it's due to their age and lack of maturity, is that they just can't accept responsibility for the things that they didn't do right, couldn't do right, or just weren't capable of doing themselves because they didn't have the right mindset to be there. So I feel that a lot of people that have negativity towards this space, this doesn't mean for everybody, but in my experience, a large part of them is their inability to accept responsibility for just what they weren't able to accomplish on their own, and having this idea of who they thought they were, or who they viewed themselves as being, and when they don't reach that level of success that they've kind of built themselves up to expect, that's where that negativity comes from. And that, like I said, that's not the case for everybody. Every situation's unique, but the majority of it, I would say, would be people building this picture of who they're going to be and what they're going to be, and just not accomplishing it.
Absolutely. There's been, I guess you could say, there's some some people in the industry who, I guess you could say, who are now like these main influencers and content creators who were originally like pro players on these teams. It kind of feels like they were picked out to be some sort of a golden child. And you see now with like ex-FaZe members who were like the professional players on the COD team, now not only getting into like a lot of these legal issues, but just problems in general with, I guess, like how they are within the industry now. It seems like a lot of it is taken for granted, what I guess can come from the industry, and a lot of it comes down to like a battle of egos.
Yeah. Another big thing that would contribute to that is, the esports scene just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger every single year, and with that happening, what happens is more and more money is being thrown at these companies, and they're able to pay their players better. So you have these really young people that are getting insane amounts of money for, one, the age that they are, but two, a lot of these kids are making more money than their parents have made their entire lives, like in a matter of a couple of years. And when you start to put money like that in young people's pockets, the desire and need to fit a certain mold, whether it be having to wear the certain type of clothes or drive a certain type of car, those create a lot of behavioral issues if they're not managed properly. Wealth, especially the wealth that some of these youngsters experienced, it's not as cool as everybody thinks it is. Like, wealth's great, and it's good to have money, and it's good to be able to provide for yourself, but if you're not taught how to manage these things responsibly and ethically, it will end up creating a lot of big problems for them moving forward, whether it be, getting themselves into debt that they can't end up getting themselves out of because they suddenly lost their job, and because of their attitudes, other organizations aren't interested in them. There's also a lot of people that really get into partying and drinking and drugs. That has a humongous effect on a lot of these like young people that are playing these games, and just ultimately where they end up.
Yeah, it's noticeable now, more of a sense, through social media. A lot of these, I guess, like these larger companies are paying these kids and these players to promote products and services towards their fan base without really being too in tune with who their fan base is and who, I guess, themselves as a company and as a player base is like trying to represent. I guess a lot of today's media kind of flies in the face of what I guess competitive esports was originally created for, which was taking these exemplary players and pitting them against each other to find out who was better. I guess I'm trying to find out, or come to like the question head of, do you think the competitive esports industry is better or worse now?
I think it continues to improve. When I started in it, and even in some situations now, because of how like fresh and new esports is, and a lot of like these organizations and professional teams, you've got you got Call of Duty teams that are representing like cities now, and Overwatch teams that are representing cities now. So there's definitely a lot of improvement, but a lot of it is uncharted territory. So they're having to learn how to manage or deal with certain situations kind of as they arise, because there's a lot of like uniqueness to the things that can pop up. A bad employee is a bad employee. That's been you've been able to handle things like that since the beginning of businesses. But when you're dealing with young people who you're essentially like kind of putting on a pedestal that you would a professional like athlete, like a football player, a basketball player, baseball, hockey, whatever it may be. These guys are significantly younger. They don't have to go to college. They don't experience a lot of life in the same way that a lot of these other people do. But I feel that the industry is definitely improving year over year, month over month, and day over day. There's just a lot of uncharted territory still, and these things will be figured out at some point.
We hope so, at least. Like you said before, seeing how like the start of Rainbow Six Siege Invitationals, going from the very first broadcasts to now, they're almost completely different. The Invitationals now almost are on par with like these like very large league tournaments that you see across the globe, and like these old Call of Duty esports tournaments that they used to produce. It's really cool to see where, I guess, esports and the video game industry are heading. But like you said, a lot of the issues that we're experiencing now, not only with, I guess, in a player sense, where you need to be aware of how the industry is changing and how to properly, I guess, promote yourself and carry yourself as a player and as a content creator. But I guess as like a whole narrative, the game industry is shifting. It's moving towards a more, I guess, commercialized identity to it, and I feel like it needs to be monitored and I guess just taken care of so that we don't lose the whole reason behind anyone is interested in, I guess, competition sports.
The integrity of esports definitely is something that needs to be maintained, but with what you're saying in terms of like everything being commercialized more, that's a direct reflection of the money that's starting to come into this, because it's a new thing, and all these companies want to get into being represented or representing. So with more money comes more problems. You're going to have people that are definitely greedy, companies that are greedy, players that are greedy, and that stuff definitely needs to be monitored and find a way to manage that. But I feel that is all a direct reflection of ownership and management from like an organizational level. They owe it to not only themselves as the owners and operators of these businesses, but they owe it to their employees and their players, because they rely on their knowledge of how to handle the business and manage the expectations that they have from their players.
Absolutely. I guess it all comes down to just properly management of like the entire, I guess, identity of what you're trying to promote as like a team.
Yeah. As far as, integrity of it, a lot of it comes down to not only like the organizations and ownership and management, but mostly to the developers of the game. Mm-hmm. The developers control the direction that the game's moving. So they have a lot of stresses put on them to make sure that they're implementing and making the right changes, whether it be adding new operators with new abilities or new weapons to the game or new maps to the game. They have a lot of pressure put on them because those are the things that are getting put up on these huge screens and venues for people to watch, and ultimately like those little things can determine the outcome of different matches for everything, and the ripple effect that could have in terms of how it'll affect an organization, a team, a player, all the way down to the employees of that company. I've seen, introductions of new operators and maps into games that have not been implemented the best, whether they be like issues with guns not operating, being, you hear OP or overpowered all the time or underpowered, and players will not adapt well to those things, and ultimately could end up costing that player their future with that organization. Those players not really putting out their best effort could end up causing the organization their spot within that esport. It could make it so they can't ensure funding for the team moving forward, and the team could end up being dissolved or sold to another organization. The players could get let off of rosters because they only wanted the spot inside the game. You see that happen in Rainbow Six and Call of Duty, and well, not really with Call of Duty. I guess probably like one of the biggest scenes that happens is Rainbow Six. So, organization wants to get out, so they'll sell their roster to a larger organization because there's only so many spots available. A team can't just say, hey, we want to play competitive Rainbow Six this year. Like, there has to be spots open. So if you don't have a spot, there's no way for you to get in. So if you have an opportunity to find an organization that's selling out, doesn't want to be in it anymore, they'll sell the team, but they'll cut the entire roster.
Yeah.
So now they have their spot inside the organization. Saw this happen with Cloud9. Cloud9 bought Reciprocity. Mm-hmm. Didn't have the success that they thought that they were going to have. Disbanded sold the organization, sold their rights to their Rainbow Six team the following year, and the entire team was let go. They had to find new jobs. Some of them don't even play or work in the industry anymore. Some of them aren't players anymore. Some of them work for other organizations in a management level type thing. So it completely changed the direction that their lives were going and what they had expected to be the outcome of their personal journeys.
Absolutely. I feel like just over this conversation that we've had, I could see the impact it's had on your life as a whole. And then also it's important to notice and that literally every part of like esports and the game industry as a whole is all interconnected and all benefits each other, and I guess is the sole success for each other. Because if the esports market ends up failing, that means the funding for the games that could be cut, and all of this information and all of this time that we've put into it could be for nothing. All of this, I guess, boils down to the fact that care needs to be taken when it comes to managing not only like an esports team and then the players, and then being able to adapt those players to like an ever-changing market and like a field in like a competitive area, but also as an industry. The video game industry has to adapt with the times moving forward so that not only can it continue to expand and to grow so that more people can enjoy it, but I guess battle these different issues that we see now popping up with this expansion.
another challenge that you see like kind of pop up with all of that being said, from a developer's point of view is, a lot of these developers of these games are building their games to be used in a competitive like esports like type environment.
Yeah.
But that's not what sells copies of the game.
Absolutely not. That's one of the largest complaints you hear nowadays is games not being developed for, I wouldn't say the casual player base, but the non-competitive player base.
Well, and your non-competitive or your casual player base is primarily what funds your ability to be able to
Make a game.
And to continue the longevity of that game. So it's difficult from a developer's point of view, trying to find a balance for not only the competitive scene, but for the scene for the common player, people that sit at home and, the weekend warriors, if you will, the guys that get off of work and go home and play with their buddies. So they've got to find a way to make that enjoyable, so they can't always implement what's best for the competitive side of the game, because they've also got to think about the casual player base. When you go to these or watch these esports events, the Call of Duty that these guys are playing, the Rainbow Six that they're playing, the Valorant that they're playing, the Dota, the League of Legends, like all these big CSGO, right? They're playing the same exact game that's delivered to the stores for everybody else to buy. They're not creating a different version of the game specifically for these guys. So they've got to keep that in mind when they're developing, they're building their games. Not only, do they need to feed their casual player base, but the game's got to have some sort of a competitive viability to it.
Absolutely. It's honestly a do or die moment for a lot of these video games. And I think that's very important to analyze now, because I guess as myself, as like a developer, I do see the issues when it comes to balancing and the need to have changes in, I guess, like gameplay to make it feel fresh and unique and fun, but also trying to balance it with every other aspect is so incredibly difficult. And I guess is the key point in taking it away is just trying to find that understanding between every single level, I guess, within the industry is very difficult. And the only way we're going to get better is if we continue to have forward movement within the industry and grow it.
Yep, it'll continue to happen as long as the right people are in place and things are managed and overseen properly. Regulations and rules are really, really important to maintain all of that.
Absolutely. I would like to thank you so much. I appreciate you doing this interview.
Yeah, no problem. It's been my pleasure, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude.
It was enough time for sure. Definitely, how long was it? 40 minutes? Yeah. It's a good interview.
Awesome, dude.